A large crowd was in attendance for Monday night's planning board meeting. The night started with a continued public hearing for illuminated signage at Daddy's Dairy. Representative from Daddy's Dairy presented a new plan for the external signage on the building. After a very brief discussion, the board unanimously passed the proposal. The second public hearing of the night was involving the Mixed Use Overlay District, or MUOD, in Norwood Center. The board proposed to expand the current zone of the MUOD to include both the building at Dempsey Insurance and the parking lot at the Nord Depot MBTA station. The board voted 4-0 for a favorable recommendation to town meeting. The final public hearing of the night was a proposed change in the town bylaws to create a section 3.6, which would allow the conversion of certain historical residential structures in town.
What is intended here is to provide a provision that would allow the owners of certain homes, and they're defined in the section as a single-family residence built before 1930 containing at least 4,000 square feet of habitable space. Somebody who owns one of those properties could, if they wanted to, if this were passed by town meeting and became part of the bylaws, somebody owning one of those properties could apply to the planning board for a special permit that would allow the conversion of that property to 2, 3, or 4 separate residential units, provided that the historic exterior of the structure is substantially maintained without major change or alteration. And for the purposes of calculating the 4,000 square feet that are required before a property could even be considered under this provision, additions or alterations to the structure that were constructed in or after 1930 would not count. So it's not as if somebody could take an older house built before 1930 and tack on a couple of thousand square feet and then say, oh, now I qualify. It has to have been in existence with that much living space prior to 1930. The house has to have been built by that time and must have had 4,000 square feet prior to that time.
Many members of the community were in attendance to voice their opinions on the proposed change to the town bylaw. After an hour-and-a-half long discussion between the board, the group opposing the change, and the members of the community, it was put to a vote. The board voted 4-0 in a favorable recommendation to town meeting. The planning board will meet again in October. Tuesday night's Board of Selectmen meeting began with department updates from Chief Brooks of the Police Department and Chief Maurice of the Fire Department. Hearings were held for Hibachi Steakhouse and Supreme Auto Plug as well. The board discussed at length about the Producer Plastic Responsibility Pledge endorsed by Town Manager Tony Mazzucco and DPW Director Mark Ryan. Mazzucco stated his case for supporting such action.
This is, you take companies like Amazon and they produce a lot of packaging, and other countries around the world, Europe and Canada in particular, there's a certain degree of responsibility they have to their packaging to make sure it's recyclable, to make sure it's compostable in some cases, and one portion of this would be encouraging Massachusetts to consider such a program. There are considerations. There is a bill under consideration in the legislature. They're being considered in several states throughout the country. What's our interest in something like that? Our trash costs continue to rise, our recycling costs continue to rise, and at the end of the day, it all comes out of the municipal budget. Full disclosure, I use Amazon all the time to get all sorts of stuff delivered, so I'm not against Amazon. I probably use them too much, but what happens is all the packaging from all the delivery services that everyone uses ultimately ends up in the trash and sometimes being recycled. And where do the costs to pay that come from? Right out of the municipal budget.
The Selectmen will meet again next Tuesday starting at 6 p.m. Tuesday night's Trails Advisory meeting was held in room 24 of Town Hall. Joe Greeley discussed future trail walks and the potential linking of town trails. Discussion ensued about a map of purchased lands and the potential purchase of East Walpole Cemetery. The board also talked about potential future collaborations with Westwood for a trail walk. The next Trails Advisory Committee meeting will be October 8th. Wednesday night, the school committee met at the Savage Center to discuss multiple agenda items. Principals across all elementary schools gave an update on their new daily schedule layout, and Lori Semino from Student Services gave a presentation on goals and expectations in her role. Continuing from last meeting, Paul Riccardi appeared before the board to reveal bid prices for the cottage proposal at the Prescott. The committee came to a decision this week.
The $20,000 bid did not have a handicap ramp, nor were they going to supply a handicap ramp. So that tosses them out. So I'm recommending that we go with the $22,770 3-year bid, which comes out to about $7,550 a year.
I'm going to make a motion to approve it. I think it's a reasonable solution.
Yeah, and the priority was to get this to you as soon as possible, so we can get the trailer up and running as soon as possible. The bids just came in the beginning of this week, so.
I'll second that. Okay. Although I will say that I would have liked to have seen more information about this prior to the meeting and have some numbers in front of us and have some information about budget implications.
On the motion, all in favor? All right, unanimous.
The school committee will be continuing their traveling school committee series this year, starting with the Coakley Middle School on October 9th. Also on Wednesday night, the Community Preservation Committee held their meeting in the Willett Room at the Civic to accommodate the crowd expected for their public hearing. The scheduled public hearing was to discuss the project for a special town meeting, specifically the Saint Street lot purchase. 2 presentations were given, and following the presentations, the committee opened it up to questions by members of the community. The committee then made a motion.
Motion to amend our previous motion to recommend to town meeting that they approve $338,000 from unrestricted CPA funds.
Second. Mrs. Donahue seconds. Any further discussion by the board? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passed.
The remainder of the meeting was spent talking about the CPC plan and a pre-application information session. The next meeting for the CPC will be in October. Thursday night, members of the community gathered at the Willett Room in the Civic for an informational presentation on Moderna, a biotechnology company looking to expand their facility here in Norwood. The meeting began with representatives from Moderna giving an overview of the company and the types of medical advances they are making. The main focus of the night was to discuss the proposed expansion plan of Moderna's Norwood facility. The presentation covered their proposed investment plan, job creation, community involvement, and a tax increment finance, or TIF. This presentation is now airing on the NCM Government Channel. Also Thursday night, the Townwide Facilities Committee met and hosted Joe McDonough, Director of Facilities in Wellesley. Before working in Wellesley, McDonough worked in Norwood for 5 years. He talked about the Facilities Department in Wellesley and what falls under their umbrella. The next meeting for the Townwide Facilities Committee is October 28th. For complete government coverage, tune into the NCM Government Channel or watch it on demand at norwoodcommunitymedia.org.